All right, happy Wednesday, everyone. We're gonna finish up the lab today, the lab on reading and writing files. So we actually finished the lesson a couple of days ago, but we're like halfway done with the lab, and we need to introduce this next assignment. It's called Mad Libs. This is a pretty cool assignment. It it involves loading in files, like files that represent stories, and then we're going to be filling in the blanks from there. All right, so today we're just going to finish the rest of the lab 13 and then give some hints for this next project. That's about it for today. Okay, so let's go into the lab 13. Let's see, lab 13 on files. All right, so we finished part 1 a couple days ago. Let's get to part 2. My part 2 was asking us to kind of write functions to wrap input and output. Right? So the first 2 questions are really just writing a function that wraps the read and write functions. Right? Like in part 1 in the lab, we did stuff with reading, right? Reading lines, and then we did some stuff with writing lines. Oh, you know what? We didn't even finish this one yet. Yeah, my bad. Here, you know what? Before I jump into part 2, I think we should finish the rest of part 1 together, just in case folks got stuck on a couple of these questions. So here, I'm going to rewind a bit, just going back to part 1. I know some of you folks already finished it, but for those who didn't finish it, let's go over it together. We left off at number 3 in part 1. This one asks us to write 4 different lines into a file called fish.txt. I think we left off at an empty file because it looks like this text, it looks like this code cell doesn't really write anything to the file. So let me just check the state of this file real quick just to see where we left off at. So this is in files, and then it's in fish.txt. Let me just see what this looks like. Okay, this is an empty file. So yeah, we're not done with this. Okay, so we just need to write some lines here, right? The code cell currently has an open file handle, so all we need to do is access that handle and use the write function, right? So file handle dot write, and then there's multiple ways we can write these lines into here. I think most folks did it in 4 different write statements, right? Like I think some folks did this right here, one fish, and then they copy that for the next lines, right? 2 fish, and then red, right? I think this is what most folks did, which is almost right. Here, let me get these punctuation real quick. Okay, I got the punctuation. Yeah, this is almost right. Here, let's run it. So I just ran the cell. So let's see what the file looks like now. I see on the left it says fish just got modified 4 seconds ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and look at it. Okay, so yeah, we see that it did print everything out here, but they're not really on separate lines. And you know, the reason for that is because the write function doesn't automatically put new lines in for us. Right? It's not like the print statement where it puts new lines for us. So we got to put it in manually. And one way we can do that is with just escape character, right? /n. This is like saying press the enter key, right? A new line. Okay, there we go. I just put new lines at the end of every text, and if I run it now, the fish.txt should be on separate lines, right? Because there's a new line at the end of every piece of text here. Okay, yeah, so this is what most folks did. You know, it's possible to do this in one single write statement as well, right? Like technically, you can actually just put everything in one statement, right? Like here, 2 fish, and then I'm gonna cut this right here, cut this 3rd line, right? Paste it, and cut, and paste. Right, so all I really did was combine them. Right, it's going to do the same exact thing. Right, so yeah, multiple ways we're going to do this. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's see. Next one is asking us to pretty much read from that file we wrote. Right, so this is asking us to read the 4 lines and just print them in reverse order. Right, so let's warm up to that. Right, we need to open it in read-only mode. Right, so we can open that file, files, and then fish.txt, and then yep, welcome enters. And then you don't need this R here, right? This is a default once again. I know I keep saying this, but you can actually look at the documentation for this. So I'm going to go to Python functions, and then just look at the primary documentation. Here we go. So one of the native functions is open, right? And it's kind of hard to read right now. It might be a little dense to read this documentation, but it's pretty much saying that the default mode is R, right? Meaning that if we don't specify the mode, it's going to use read-only mode for us. Yeah, but I put it in anyways, just to be a little more readable and more explicit. So this is going to open a file. We need to store it in some sort of variable so we can perform operations on it. Okay, there we go. We just opened it. And as a good programming practice, make sure to close it as well, because you don't want to forget to close like Windows, right? If you have a lot of open tabs, you're gonna have to close them at some point. All right, so there we go. I'm just gonna do the stuff in the middle, right? All we need to do is read the 4 lines and then print them in reverse order. Right, so there's multiple ways of doing this. There's actually some really nice ways we can do this, but I think we need to cover loops. If anything, so far we really know how to do things one at a time. Like we do know how to do a file handle.read line, right? Like 4 different times. Right, so this is going to read in 4 lines. Right, and then let's just store them in some sort of string. Right, so these are doing something and returning. So I'm just going to store them in like line 1, line 2, line 3 is equal to 4. All right, see, there we go. We read all the lines, stored them into the string. So we're technically done with the file. So I'm just going to close it right here and then print them in reverse order. All right, so you can print it right here. I'm just going to print them in one statement. Line 2, line 3, line 4. Oh, it needs to be in reverse order. My bad. So 4, 3, 2, and then 1. All right, and there we go. Yeah, see, now it's going to print everything on reverse order. Yeah, just so you know, this is one way of doing it. There's so many different ways. That's why I encourage folks to try it out yourself before seeing the solution. Otherwise, you're constraining yourself to one single approach. Right? There's so many ways of doing this. If you're curious in other ways of doing this, there's some techniques like we could do a list conversion. Other ways. Here, let me see. Other ways. We can do like list conversion. We can do list slicing. We actually haven't even talked about list slicing yet, but if folks want to look into this, this is some really nice stuff. Or we can do loops. Right. Once again, we haven't really covered loops yet, but we'll cover this in a couple weeks. Okay, let's move on. Read into a list. Right. This one is asking us to open up the same exact file, but load it into the list. So we saw this in the previous lesson. I'm just going to load up the previous lesson just in case folks need a refresher. Let's see, files. Let me scroll down a bit. Okay, yeah, so in the lesson, there was a section on reading lines into a list. I'm just going to reuse this. Right? All this is doing is converting a file handle to a list. Right? That's all it's doing. So let's apply that. Right. Okay, let me open this file. So open fish.txt. I'm going to open it up in read-only mode. Oh, this fish.txt This is actually, I made a mistake here. This actually doesn't exist. Right? If I run this, it's going to say, oh, file not found. It's because this is in a directory. So I'm going to go files. Right? It's in the files directory over here. So it's in there. So I'm going to open it and then store it in the file handle. Then, as a good programming practice, I'm going to close it right away. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Okay, so here all we need to do is convert the file handle into a list. Right. So Python is really neat. Right. It lets us. It converts it for us. Right. We don't have to go through it one at a time. So we just have to use a syntax list file handle, and then store it in some sort of variable. I'm just going to call it lines. Okay. So this should do it. Let me press play real quick. Here we go. And it didn't print anything, but it technically did read it into a list. And if folks want to visualize it, you can just print it here. Right? I'm just going to print the list, which is called lines. All right, see, so we did load it in correctly. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. See, give me 1 second, folks. My projectors are flickering. Sorry about that, Terrace. Okay. I think these projectors are overheating. Okay. Give me 1 more minute, folks. I'm just gonna let these cool down. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. All right, there's a chance I'm gonna go on a 5-minute break to fix something. Here, let's see. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna. Let me like 1 minute. I need to fix something. All right, thanks for the wait, everyone. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, last one in part 1, and then we're gonna go on to writing some functions. Okay, so here's kind of a sneak peek into some cool stuff we can do with a list. Let's see, print the last line, right? This one says use the list that we just created, right? The list here is called lines, and it wants us to print the last line of the file. Right, so all we have to do is access this very last element. Right, so one way you can do that is just by, printing the last element there. Right, so the last element here is represented by 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. Right, so this is gonna print out the last one. Right, this is one way we can do it. But you can also represent the last element with a different expression, right? Like this is actually kind of hard coded. This is assuming that our list is size 4. If you want to be a little more general, we could use the length minus 1, right? Like, where did 3 come from? Right? 3 came from the length of the list minus 1. Right? So if we don't want to hard code it, we could generalize it by saying the length of the list minus 1. All right, this is a little more general, and it's going to work with different files that have multiple lines. You could do that, or another way we can go is this is kind of a concept we haven't really talked about yet, but remember how we can say 3 as a last element? In Python, you can index with negatives as well, right? If we use a -1, this is saying grab the last element, right? Because it's going 0, and then -1 will wrap around to the end of the list. So this is going to print out the same exact thing. So yeah, you can use -1 as well. Yeah, many ways you can do this. Okay, let's move on to part 2, which is going to wrap some reading and writing functions, and then we'll move on to the homework, some homework hints. Okay. Let's see. Okay, as a quick intro, the first two questions in part two is really just asking us to wrap the reading and writing functions, right? Like the first one is saying, hey, write a function called read file, right? And all it does is it takes a file name as an argument, right? and then just return every single thing in it. So all it's really asking us to do is wrap this stuff right here, right? Like it's asking us to wrap something like this, right? Open the file, read it, and then uh, return it. So let's do that. Okay. Before I even code the function, let's kind of hypothetically see what's supposed to happen. All right. So I'm gonna pretend to invoke the function below. All right, so imagine we had a the function read file. Right. That's the goal of this first part. Right. So the goal of this function is to take in a single argument. Right? So the argument here is a file name. And for the sake of this purpose, it says you can use the file example.txt. And so let me just see where this example.txt is located in relative to this labs directory. Let's see, it's probably in files. Oh, let's see, I don't have an example.txt. Okay. So you know what? I'm going to create it manually. Yeah, I don't have an example. Okay, I'm just going to create it manually then. So new file, example.txt. I'm just going to put in some random stuff in here. Like this is example.txt. Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Just some random stuff. So there we go. There's a text file. Make sure to save it because there's this circle here. The circle means it's not saved. So Control S and that'll save it. Okay, cool. So I have the file here now. The goal of this function is to take a file name. Right? So the file name here is files and then / example.txt. This is the file name. And then the goal is that this function should return a string that represents every single thing in here. Right? Just a single string, right? Not a bunch of lines. All right, so let's do that. All right, this should return something. So I could store this in a variable like maybe contents, right? It's equal to read file, and then imagine if we printed it. All right, so this is supposed to print out every single thing that we read from it, but it's not going to do anything yet because we never programmed, we never defined this function yet. All right, so hopefully people see the goal of this function. So let's go ahead and define it. All right, so define something called read file. And then see, it takes a single file name, right, as a string. So this is the argument, right? It's a file name. Okay. And you know what? You don't really have to do this, but you do have to do on the final a doc string. Right, I'm just going to put in a doc string real quick, which is really just stating its purpose. Reads a file and returns the contents. Okay, and then the parameter here, there's only one of them, file name, which is a string, the name of the file to read, and it's going to return just a string. Returns a string. Okay, there we go. There's the doc string. Okay, So this is a general function that's we're looking at file name, right? So if we were to invoke this with this file, it could be any file, by the way. Right? So that we just happen to use this one. We need to open the file and then read from it and return it. Right? So let's go ahead and open it right away. Right, so I'm just going to open it. So it's open up file name, and then I'm going to open up in read-only mode. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to put it in there. Store it in a variable called file handle. This way we can perform operations. And then as a good programming practice, make sure to close it as well. File handle.close. Okay. And make sure this indent is here. Right? If it weren't for the indent, then the statement doesn't actually belong in the function. Okay, so we opened the file handle. We need to grab its contents and then return it. So once again, I highly recommend trying it out yourself. If you're on the recording, please try it out yourself. Just because, yeah, once again, if you see the solution, it's gonna kind of just constrain you to one single approach. So yeah, try it out yourself. But yeah, one way we can do this is with a function called read. Right, so back to the lesson, I just switched back to the lesson. You might remember that there was a function called read, right, instead of read line. So read here, this one will grab everything from where we started off at and then go to the very end. So we could reuse that function. Right, we can say file handle dot read. Right, so this is going to start from the beginning and then grab everything to the end. This does return a string, so we can go ahead and store that into something. I'm going to store it into a variable called, let's see, what's a good variable name? We could call it contents. It actually doesn't really matter, but as long as folks see that this variable is different from here, right? Even though they're the same name, they're in different scopes. They just happen to be called the same name. Okay, cool. So this kind of reads it, and now we can go ahead and return it. Right, so I'm going to return it right here at the end of the function. Return contents. Okay. Okay, let's see how it works now. Okay, just loaded the function and press play here. There we go. It's now printing everything in that file. All right, once again, the example.txt is right here. So yeah, that's everything. Okay. Let's see. And once again, this function is really general. Right? It actually works with every file that we pass into it. Right? Like we can pass in fish.txt. So let me try that. Let me try putting in a fish right here. So fish.txt. So when I run this function, it's going to print something different. Right, so run, and there we go. Right, it printed out different stuff. And you can do this multiple things. Here, let me try printing out this maze.png. There's going to be, oh, you know what? This is 10 kilobytes. So this might spam my terminal. 10 kilobytes is a lot to represent in text. So don't do this. It's probably going to spam your terminal. So I'm going to try to, I want to see what it looks like, what the string representation of this maze looks like. So I'm going to go maze.png. Maze.png. And then let's run this. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's that makes sense. Yeah, because the PNG file is not really raw text, right? This is an image file, so it's got a different representation. We can open up addressbook.txt. All right, let's try that. This is a Oh wait, when I opened up example.txt, yeah, let's go back to there. Yeah. Uh, when I loaded up example.txt and printed as contents, it printed all this stuff. Just gives my file here. Do you have this? Yeah. I just typed in some random contents into here. If you're doing this as well, just make sure to save it. So yeah, Control S to save. Okay, so hopefully people kind of see what's happening with this function. All right, all this function is doing is wrapping this read function. That's all it's really doing. Okay, let's move on to the next ones. All right. Let's see. The second one is really the same thing again. Right? It's asking us to wrap the write function. So let's do that. It says create a function called write file. This time it takes two arguments. Right? The file name that we're going to be writing to, and then another argument, contents. This is going to be a string that represents the stuff we'll write into the file. Okay. And then the function opens the file, removing any previous contents. We'll talk about this in a bit, but basically you don't have to worry about this, because if you open up a file in write mode, it's going to clear everything anyways. So that's kind of what happens when you open in write mode. Okay, and then finally it returns the number of characters written. Okay, so let's see. Let's pretend we're calling this function. Right, it's going to do a couple things. So imagine we had the function called write file. Right, it does take two arguments. Right, let's say I have the arguments for the file name output.txt. Right, so output.txt, and then the second argument to this function is the contents. Right, I'm just going to hard code some string here. Like I'm just going to hard code a string like this is output.txt, and then maybe a testing 1 2 3. Let me put in some new lines here. Let me go new line, then new line. This way we have 3 lines on it. Okay, so this function is actually supposed to do two things. All right, one, it's supposed to create a brand new file called output.txt, and then dump this whole string into it. Right, that's the main purpose of this function. But additionally, this problem wants us to return the number of characters written to the file. We'll talk about this return in just a bit, but let's talk about the main purpose. Right, we want to write this string into this file name. Okay, so let's get this function started. Hopefully people kind of see what the goal of this is. So let's define a function called write file. Okay, it takes two arguments, right? One is the file name, and the other one is the contents. And let me just do the doc string real quick. Right, outputs, let's see. Outputs contents into a file. Okay, and then there's two arguments. One is the file name. This is the name of the file you write to. And then the contents. This is the stuff. This is a string, right? The stuff to write into the file. Okay, and once again, we'll talk about this return in just a bit. It does return the number of characters written. Right, that's not really the main purpose of here, though. The main purpose is to output the content into a file. So let's do that. right? This output gets sent up to this function file name, so we need to open it. Right? We need to open up the file name in write only mode. Right? So I'm going to do a W here, right? Meaning it's going to open up this file name, clear out the contents. And that's the default behavior whenever we open up a file name in write mode. So be careful when doing this, because it's going to clear everything. Right? And then maybe store it in some sort of variable that we can work with. So I'll store it in a variable called file handle. And then once again, as a good program practice, make sure to close it. So I'm going to close it right away. Great. Cool. Now I'm going to do some stuff in the middle. Right. So imagine that we have a open file. Right, now we need to dump the contents into it. Right, like using the write function. Right? I think folks have seen this up there somewhere. Right? There is a function called write. It's a class function. So file handle dot write. Then we're going to be writing the contents. Right? This whole string will go into it. Okay. So I think that actually does the main purpose of this function. Right? We'll talk about this return in just a bit, but we should test this function real quick just to make sure we're on the right track. So I'm going to go ahead and test it. So let me press play on here. Okay, I just loaded in the function. So let's go ahead and invoke it. So down here, I'm going to press play on the invocation. Right, press play. Okay, it finished. Right, there's no output on the notebook, but there should be a brand new file here. Oh, it's not in here. It's in the labs directory. It's in the labs directory because I didn't really specify the directory to put it in. Right, so it's going to put it relative to our notebook. Right, if you want to be more organized, you can put it in files and then /output. Right, this will kind of organize things a little better. But we have output right here. Right, I just created this. So let's take a look at it. Output.txt. Okay, sweet. Looking good. Here, let me put it horizontally. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay. People kind of see what happened now. So this, it dumped all of these contents into here and on multiple lines. There is a space over here, which makes sense because we have spaces after these new lines. Okay, and we can keep testing this, right? Like if we were to put a new string here, like let me say roses are red, /n for a new line, then violets are blue, then something something, /n. Okay, so I'm just going to rerun this invocation. Right, it should replace all the contents into this output. So I'm going to run this, and then you see it says output just got modified. I'll go take a look at it. There we go. See, it got modified. So there's brand new stuff in here. Okay. Unexpected indent. Oh yeah. Let's see. Unexpected indent probably means a function isn't lined up correctly. So yeah, but basically everything here, it's in. Yeah. Yeah. Here, let me take a look at yours real quick. Unexpected indents. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool, I'm back. There's a couple good clarifications that I just stumbled on. I do want to reiterate that this output is relative to our notebook directory, right? Like, if we wanted to put it in this files directory, all we'd have to do is, change this directory and specify where to put it in. Right? So if I put this, prefix it with a files and then forward slash, and then rerun it, right? We're gonna see that it's gonna pop up here at some point. Let me see. Oh, there it is. Yeah, modified 9 seconds ago. All right, so yeah, you just gotta make sure the paths are correct. We're working with relative paths, so it's relative to the notebook that we're on. Okay, now let's see. Okay, let's do a couple more and then we'll move on to some homework hints. Okay, hopefully people are getting the point here. Okay. Okay. A couple more. Let's see. This one's going to be a tiny bit trickier because it's going to ask us to perform math. Right, so this one is asking us to, read from a file, and we're assuming that the file has some numbers in there, and it wants us to sum up the numbers in that file. Okay, so just before we even talk about this function, right? Imagine we had a file here. Oh, you know what? Someone in the Zoom chat. Let's see. We still need to return the number of characters. Yes. Thanks, Joe. Here, I'm gonna rewind a bit. I forgot to do one more thing in the previous function. Thank you. I got sidetracked a bit. So yeah, rewinding a bit. This function, it does do the main purpose on outputting the contents into a file, but we forgot to return the number of characters written. Right. So this is useful information because the caller, right? So the caller is down here, right? It might be useful to know how many, how big the file is, right? Like right now, this doesn't really know, but if we return the number of characters written, then we can do that, right? So there's multiple ways on doing this. Let's see. One way you can do it is kind of by returning the length of the string, um, the length of the string contents. Right? This is one way because this is going to give us how many characters are in this string. And that's one way. Or I think a better way would be to actually grab a return value from here. Right? Like this function actually returns a value. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the previous lesson just so folks get a little refreshed. So the write function actually returns how many things were written into it, right? Like highlighted here, right? Write returns a number. Right? The number is the total number of bytes written into the file. So we could reuse that return value. It's a better programming practice because sometimes the write function might not write everything, right? Like if the contents is too large, then maybe it might stop at some point. So we could do something here like bytes written equal to this return value. Right? Bytes written is the same thing as saying characters written. In Python, every character is a single byte. Right? So then we can just go ahead and return the bytes written. Return the bytes written. Right? This is a better program practice in comparison to earlier. Right? Earlier we just returned the length of the contents. Right? These two are technically the same, but this one is a little better because we're not guaranteed that the file handle was successful, right? Like sometimes the file handle might get interrupted. Right? It might get interrupted, so these two might not be equal. So it's probably better to use the bytes written. Okay, so let's play that, and then now this should return some value, right? So it says 52. Right? 52. This is just the result of how many characters we wrote. Right? You can count those out. It's 52 characters. Okay, and typically you would store this in something, like maybe wrote. I'm gonna store it in a variable called wrote, which is a integer variable. And then I'm just going to print it back out. So print wrote this many characters. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, wrote 52 characters. All right, and I can add in some stuff here. All right, let me just add in some garbage into this contents, and then rerun it. There it is. See, 60 characters because I added 8 more characters. Okay, thanks for that, Joe. I totally forgot about that. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the last couple questions, and then we're going to move on to the homework hints. So once again, before I even jump into this function, let's imagine that we had a file of numbers. Right? For the sake of simplicity, let's stick with 4 numbers for now. Right? Like imagine we had a file here. I'm going to create a file. Right? Imagine we have a file here called numbers.txt. Or actually, you know what? Maybe yeah. Let's do numbers just to be general. All right. So here is our numbers.txt. It's currently empty. Right here on the bottom, this is numbers.txt. Right. Imagine that there are numbers in here. Right. Like I'm just gonna put in some random numbers like 6, and then 4, and then 7 and 3. Right, just some random numbers. It doesn't really matter what you put in here. But yeah, just put in 4 random numbers. And then make sure you save it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Control S. There it is. It's saved. The goal of this function is to work with numbers, right? Not just this text file, but any text file that contains numbers. So this function should read a file and sum up all of these numbers, and then just return that number. All right, so here I'm going to quit this text file for now. This is just for example. Right, so before I even code that function, right, imagine that we wrote that file sum function. Right, it takes one argument, a file name. Right, so here I'm just going to put the file name, which is let's see, it's in files and then / numbers.txt. But the goal of this is this should open up this file, calculate the sum, and return it. So if I were to print it out, right, like if I were to store it in some number, let me think of a variable name. Let's see, I'm just gonna say sum. I don't really want to call it sum is equal to this because sum is actually a function in Python. I don't really want to reuse this name. I mean, you can, but I'm gonna name it something else. Let's see. I'm just gonna say total. All right. So imagine that we open up the file and then it returned the total, and then we can just print out the total. All right. So let's see. Total is a total. Right. The goal of this is it should print out 20. Right. Because let me see the numbers.txt again. Right, see, if you do the math, the sum of all these numbers should be 20. Right? 6 plus 4 plus 7 plus 3, that should be 20. So this function should return 20. Okay, hopefully people see the goal of this function now. to work with data, kind of. Okay, and there's going to be some tricky things happening here. We're going to take this a little slow because there's some weird stuff that might happen. All right, like, so we need to define the function. It's called file sum. It takes a single argument, the file name. Okay, let me just do the docstring real quick. Okay. The purpose is to sum up the first 4 lines in a number file. In a file of numbers. And once again, we're assuming that the file contains numbers, right? Not text. Okay, and then the argument is just the 1, right? File name, the name of the file, and then it's just going to return the sum. There's 4 lines, 4 numbers. Yeah. Okay. We do need to open up the file. Right? We're not going to be writing it into it. We're just going to be reading. So I'm going to open it in read-only mode. And then store it in the file handle. Oh, and then a quick little thing. Earlier, someone had an unexpected indent error. That typically comes from this indent right here. So whenever you're writing in a function or inside of a scope, it needs a tab, right? A tab or 4 spaces. Same thing. That's the convention in Python. So same with right here, right? When I close it, I'm going to do 4 spaces or a tab. Same thing in this notebook. Okay, but we do need to open it, and we need to read in 4 lines and sum it up. Right? So imagine that we had a result variable, right? And we're going to return everything in it. Right? So let's actually, I'm not even going to make a result variable. Right? Let's read in the 4 lines. Right? So I'm going to read in 4 lines. Right, and store them in some sort of variable here. So, okay. So this is reading 4 lines, right? And then we do need to store them into some variable so we can sum it up. Right? So this is technically a line. Right? So I'm gonna stick with the convention on line 1 is equal to this, line 2 is equal to this, line 3. 4. Okay, so this is going to read in the 4 lines. And before I even sum them up, I do want to take things a little slower and do some sanity checks. All right, so before I sum them up, let's see what these lines are. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and print them. This is a sanity check print statement, right, just to make sure things are going okay. You don't need to do this. Just a sanity check. So I'm going to print out line 1 is. All right, once again, you don't have to do this as long as folks are kind of seeing why I'm sanity checking. All right, I'm just double checking the values of these lines. Okay. Get this. Change these numbers to. Yeah, it's a good idea to take things a little slower because I realized that we've been typing in a lot and then just kind of testing. It's a good idea to test frequently. So here, let's test this. I'm going to press play and then invoke the function. Right. Okay, invoke it. Okay, there we go. See what happened here? So it says line 1 is 6, line 2 is 4, line 3 is 7, and then this is 3. Right? This makes sense because our numbers is like that, right? Line 1, 6, 4, 7, 3, right? This makes sense. So yeah, it kind of looks good, right? It looks like our variables are good, meaning that we might be ready to sum them up. Our total is nothing so far, which also makes sense because our function doesn't return anything yet, right? That's why this is printing nothing. Okay, so we just sanity check these lines. We might be ready to sum them up. So let me sum them up. Right? Like maybe, like all we need to do is return the sum of these 4 numbers, right? So let's try that. Let's try returning the sum of these first 4 numbers. Oh, I need tab. Okay, I'm just gonna go line 1 plus line 2 plus line 3 and 4. Okay, so let's test this. I'm just gonna run this function and see what happens. Okay, so I got rid of the sanity check statements, press play, and it says total is 6473. Weird, right? It's not giving us 20, even though it should. Yeah. You're just saying what? Oh, total is none. Is your return statement? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because, yeah, so there's a question earlier about uh, it was printing nothing. So if the function has no return statement, it's default going to return nothing. So that's why without the return. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the function does do the computation and the reading, but it doesn't allow the caller access to it. But yeah, by returning it, it does give us access. Okay, but here, there's something weird going on though, right? Like this should have said total is 20, but it's printing is literally just echoing the numbers in the text file. Anyone know why this is it? All right, it should have said 20. It's a little weird. Yeah, it should have said 20, but yeah, yeah, yeah. The total should have been 20, right? Like, see, this is we just sanity check these lines, right? Line 1 is 6, right? So 6 plus 4 plus 7 plus 3 should give us 20. Yeah, I mean that's part of the reason. Yeah, yeah, that's part of the reason. So the function is actually calculating something right here, right? It is adding something, right? Like this. Oh, I see what you mean. Like yeah, I mean that could be it. So like you're probably seeing something like maybe yeah, we could try that. Here, let's try that. Like maybe I'm just gonna name it result, right? So you could try that, and return the result. So something like this, right? Yeah, it's actually gonna be the same exact thing. So it's equivalent to earlier, right? So now if I run this, it's the same thing, right? It's not giving us 20 yet, even though we did do the correct computation. Oh yeah, that actually is right. These are technically strings. So in our sanity check over here, if we print out the types of lines, all right. So let me just print out the type. type of line 1 is, I'm just going to do the type. All right, this is a sanity check again. All right, we see that it's actually a string. Right, so this is our sanity check right here. It's saying the type is a string. So we're not really adding numbers. We're technically concatenating strings. Right, so what's really happening is we're doing something like this right here. We're doing like 3 plus 7 plus 6 plus 1. Right? And technically these do have new lines. Right? We're technically saying each line, add them together, and we're gonna get something like this. Right? So if we print it out, it's gonna just dump out all of these. Right? So that's kind of what's happening here. We're just concatenating strings. So one way we can work with this, we could convert it. Right here, let me go back to this Python terminal to see what, so people can see what's going on. Right, so 3 /n. I'm gonna stick with 1 plus 1 actually, because currently we're doing something like 1 plus 1, right, which is not giving us 2. Right, but what if we were to kind of convert it? Right, I think it's possible to convert this to a float. So let me try that. Right, float. You will see what happened here. We converted a string to a float. So if we were to do the proper addition, then we would convert both of these to floats. All right, and that should give us the right answer. So yeah, let's try that. Right, basically, we need to convert each of these lines into a float. Right, so float, yeah, float, yeah, nice catch, Terrace. Yeah, so this is converting all the strings into floats. And then now we test it. Press play here. It finally says 20. Right. So yeah, hopefully people kind of see what's happening here. This is like, all we're really doing is summing up numbers in a file. Right? So it can work with any files. Right? Right now we're just working with this one called numbers.txt, but it could be anything. Right? Like let me just create another file. You don't have to do this. I'm just gonna create another file. Maybe. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. Here, I'm gonna scroll up a bit. Yeah, it does need a return result. Okay. Anyways, I was back to just. You don't have to do this. I'm gonna create another one. Whoops. Maybe I'll call this like exam scores. All right. So imagine I had a text file called exam scores, and I'm just gonna put in some random numbers in here again. Like maybe let's say someone got 100, and let's say someone got 90. Let's say someone got a 70, and maybe say someone got like a 80. All right, just some random numbers. So there's 4 exam scores here. So if I were to let me save this file. Save this file, and then if I were to rerun this function with that file, right, exam scores.txt, and we see that the total is now 340. Right, which makes sense because that's the sum of all of these. This is useful because it's good for maybe doing data analysis. Right, like if we were to calculate the average is just this divided by 4, right? So I'm just going to say average is let's go total divided by 4. All right, so the average exam score here is 85. So this is some good stuff right here. Okay. Let me revert all of this. Okay, any questions about this stuff so far? I know we covered a lot. File sum.
So you know where I believe the R is, where the file name is?
Hmm?
Is it specifically need to be double quotes or just one singular quote? Because I remember looking back a little bit of the footage from yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
some of the code went through like a double. Sometimes you either put doubled or just one singular little quotation.
Oh,
Does
it
it
doesn't matter for this
matter?
case. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it doesn't matter because some strings can be represented with double quotes or single quotes. Like
Oh, okay.
like if I let me just go back to this Python terminal just to be a little faster. Like the hello in double quotes evaluates to this, right? But single quote hello evaluates to the same exact thing. So yeah, it doesn't really matter, but it does matter when you're representing strings with double quotes or single quotes inside of it. But
Oh,
for
okay,
this
got it.
case, we're only dealing with a just a single letter, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure because sometimes I get confused with like, do you want like the code for it to be like doubled or just single when it comes to these?
Hmm. It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, as long as
Thank
you're
you.
staying consistent. I haven't been staying consistent actually, but yeah, yeah, just try to stay consistent.
All right. Got it.
I haven't been consistent because my C++ class, double quotes and
Oh,
single
okay. Yep.
quotes are a little different in C++.
Understandable.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, just to kind of reiterate on that, you can look back at this previous lesson. It's on quotes and formatting. So this is lesson 8, and yeah. So maybe try revisiting this, and it kind of talks about the differences between these two. But basically, there's no difference until you're trying to represent a certain punctuation. So lesson 8. Okay. Are there any
Okay.
other questions? Oh yeah, no problem. No problem. Any other questions about this stuff before we move on? Okay. Oh, there's one more here. I'm actually going to skip over this. This one is not too important right now. Um, Folks can try it out themselves. I'm going to consider it optional though. This one, it's asking us to just move the first line of a file to the end of it. So if you're curious in doing this one, it's going to have two main parts, right? The first part of this function will be reading a file into some sort of list, right? And then the next part of the function will be overwrite that file with a different order, right? So this is kind of a long function. This function is going to contain an open in read mode and then another open in write mode, right? So you don't have to try this. It's actually not too important. It's kind of just bringing everything together, and it's a little tricky because you're gonna have to mix up the read and the read line. So yeah, once again, you don't have to know too much about this. If anything, the biggest takeaway here is kind of just reading and reading files. Right, that's a big takeaway here. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, exactly. We're not going to be doing too much stuff with writing files, but yeah. I don't think so. Yeah, yeah. Reading files will be the final. Yeah, we're not going to do anything with writing files because this is a slightly dangerous operation, and I don't really want folks to accidentally overwrite something. Because when you open up a file in write mode, it's going to clear out everything. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Someone just said uh, when we open in write mode, everything is cleared. So, yeah. Let me look at the lesson actually. Just highlight something. So yeah, going back to the lesson, it's basically the default behavior. Whenever we open something in write mode, right, the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to erase the contents in there, right, before we start dumping in the data. So we did talk about a append mode, where instead of writing, we can do append for like log files. But yeah, for this class, we're not really going to talk about append too much. Basically, append mode, like if we did this with an A instead, it's going to keep the contents in there and just add to the end of the file. Okay, yeah, good question. Okay. Okay, yeah, once again, we're done with this lab. I'm going to consider the last one optional, right? This top to bottom one. Okay. Let's see. Let's take a 5-minute break and then move on to the project. So the project, you might want to get ready for it. So maybe download the files, and then I'll be back in like 5. But yeah, the project here is Mad Libs. It consists of 4 files. So you might have to kind of organize your directories a bit for folks who are around. Yeah, to try to organize it a bit because this project has a notebook and 3 different text files. So you might want to dedicate a folder to contain all of these 4 files. Okay, I'll be back in like 5 minutes. Okay, I have everything loaded right here already. So make sure you have a dedicated folder, and that contains the notebook and these 3 text files. That's what we're going to need for this project. All right, as a quick sneak peek into here, Mad Libs. This is a game that some people might have played in their elementary school. It basically is this is a book that contains stories, and the stories have blanks. So there would be one player that would ask another person, like, "Hey, what verb? Like, name a verb, or name a noun, and then name an adjective." Right? And then the other person would fill those in, and then complete a story. Right? So then the story would usually come out looking, I guess, kind of funny, depending. Yeah, yeah, folks. Yeah, it's good to see. Good to see that some people still play this. So yeah, it's like a fill in the blank game, and then the end result is usually unexpected. So that's the goal of this assignment, right? There are 3 text files here. Right, I'll jump into these later. These 3 text files contain stories with blanks. Right, so let me just open it real quick. So I'm gonna go in MadLib 1. All right, let's take a look at this one. So MadLibs 1. Okay, it might look a little hard to read right now, but if anything, we just need to focus on the very first line for now. These are going to be very short stories, just for the sake of not being tedious. So each of these files will have a story on the first line, Bless you. And then
Oh, sorry.
the first line is really just HTML, right? Like this this is just HTML tags that says put this in a paragraph. But all you really need to know is that the first line contains always going to contain three holes, right? So we'll talk about these holes in a bit. It's really going to exercise stuff from a while ago. Right? Like a while ago, we might have done the template function. Right? We'll talk about that in a bit. A template format function. Right? But yeah, the first line contains a story, and then the next three lines contain the type, right? The part of speech, right? So imagine that the player one would say, "Hey, give me an adverb," right? So then that adverb would go into here, and then the that player would say, "Oh, okay, now give me a noun," right? And then that noun would go into here, right? And then so on, right? This adjective would go on to the next blank. So you don't have to worry about these last three lines too much. We're going to do this in class together, but the whole takeaway is being able to read a file, right, and loading in the first line and filling in the blanks. So this is going to exercise two things. It's going to exercise opening files, and then the second thing is going to exercise a template format function. A while ago on lesson 8, a while ago, I forgot when this was, probably like 5 weeks ago, we did something on the template format function. So you might remember stuff like here, the format function. This is lesson 8. Right? Basically, there is a function, a string function. So this is a string. It's possible to say string format, right? And then whatever arguments we put in that function will get placed into this hole. Right? So there's two takeaways from the assignment, right? One is opening files, and then the next is going to be using this format function to fill in the blanks. Okay, so that's the takeaway. Let me go back to the project directory. Okay, here we are. Okay, once again, there are 3 files. Right, we just looked at the first one. I'm going to look at the second one. It's really going to be the same thing. So here's the second one. Right, just a different story. Right, it was a dark and stormy noun, and then line break. The rain, past tense verb, in torrents rattling along the plural noun. That's the story here. And then there's another one here. You can take a look at that later. You can write your own too. Okay, let's take a look at the notebook. So the notebook, yeah. Yeah. These are examples for folks to process your data. Oh, yeah, good question. You're gonna have to upload this yourself. So these are located in the Canvas. Mhm. Oh, the purpose of this Mad Libs is uh, it's, yeah. It's that this notebook is going to be opening these different files, right? Well, we'll see in a bit. But basically, we're going to be writing a function that allows us to fill in the blanks in certain files. Right here, this will make sense in a bit. So here's the notebook right here, right? Uh, I'm going to skip over some of the directions just because folks can probably read them later. So I'm going to be a little concise about just reading over this. But basically, all we have to do is write a function called do mad lib. Right? There are some widgets here. Don't worry about the widgets yet. Right? All the widgets really do is play the function for us. Right? Let's interact with it manually for now. Right, so we need to write a function called do Mad Lib, and all this function is going to do is choose. It's going to open a file, right? Like whichever file was specified, it's going to open it up, and it's going to load in the story, and then spit out another story. Right. So here, let's make this more concrete. Basically, there is a function called do Mad Lib, and it takes 4 arguments. Right. The first one is the story to open, right? And then the next 3 arguments are the blanks, right? The words to fill in the blanks with. Okay, and then it's going to return the story. Right? So basically, it's going to put all of these 3 arguments together and return a story. Okay. So let's see. We'll worry about the widgets in a bit. This is not too important yet. But so here, let's make it more concrete. So we need to write a function called do Mad Lib. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and define it real quick. So define a function called do Mad Lib. Okay. It takes 4 arguments. The first argument is the file name, and the next 3 are words to fill in the blanks with. So let's put in that. So file name, and then there are 3 words, right? Word 1, word 2, word 3. Okay. So I'm going to put in the docstring here. Once again, I encourage folks to skim over these directions later. I know I kind of skipped over them, but yeah, you can read them at home later. This is a little more concise. So this function is meant to generate a story based off the file given. That's all the function is going to do. Generate a story. Right? There are 4 arguments. One is the file name. This is the file containing the story. Right, and then there are each story is going to be guaranteed to have 3 blanks. Right, so the 3 blanks will be using these strings. Right, the word 1. This is the first word. The first word. Right, these are going to be used for the filling in the blanks. The second word. Word 3. Okay, and then it's going to return the story. Right? In particular, it's going to return an HTML string. So this is going to return an HTML string representing the generated story. Okay. Okay. Let's work this from the bottom up so folks kind of see what's about to happen. For now, I'm just going to return a blank HTML string. Okay. And then kind of work from the bottom up. So I'm just going to go ahead and return a blank HTML string. Let me see. Story. Story is not declared yet. I'm just going to say story is blank. Or I'm just going to say testing, actually. Testing. Just a dummy value. Okay, hopefully people might see the goal of this now. This is actually not going to work yet because we didn't import the HTML. So you might want to import the HTML. Import, I think it's from IPython. Display import HTML. This will let us convert strings to HTML. So yeah, don't forget this first line. Okay. Once again, we're working from the bottom up. Currently, this function only returns a string that says testing, testing. Okay, imagine if we invoked the function. So I'm going to make a brand new cell here. Okay, make a brand new cell just to manually invoke the function. Right. Below is the widgets. You don't have to worry about the widgets yet. We'll talk about that later. But let's pretend to manually invoke the function. So it's called do mad lib, and it takes 4 arguments. Right. The first argument is the file name that represents the story we're going to be working with. Right. So let's say we're going to be working with this file right here, madlib1.txt. Right. So I'm just going to pass it into the function. Right. Madlib1.txt. Right. So we're going to be working with this file just for example purposes. And then the next 3 arguments are words. All right, I'm just going to put in some random words here for now. Like I'm just going to say like um, red, and then uh, Bob, and then green. All right, just 3 random strings. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and invoke this function now. Right, I'm going to press play. Right. So the result of this function is an HTML that just says testing, testing. What should it be though? Right. Like this is just a dummy value. Right. What should the result of this function be if we use this here? If we use the madlib one, right? Well, it should look like this first line right here. And so this is madlib one. The goal of this function is to fill in these blanks with red, Bob, and green. Right? These are just random words I chose. Right? But basically, it shouldn't return testing, testing. It should return this whole HTML string, right? Just the first line. Right? But it's going to substitute these words into this hole, these 3 holes. So, oh yeah, the split screen thing. Huh? Oh, I just created a new cell for that one. Oh, I didn't. Oh, if anything, I just dragged this here to be split screen. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is a brand new cell I just created. It's just for manually invoking the function. Yeah, you do have to put 3 random strings in here because the function is expecting. Yeah, yeah. But for here, I just hard coded 3 random strings. Okay, just to kind of repeat this again, right? If we're manually invoking the function, right? If we were to work with madlib2.txt, right, and I run this, right, what should it print? Right, it prints testing, testing, but it should print, it should output this other story right here, right? It should output this one, but with a red here, Bob here, and then green here. Right, that's what it should do, but the function doesn't really open the file yet. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Give me 1 second. My projectors are flickering. Okay. Great. Hopefully that didn't interrupt too much, Terrace, the flickering. Sure. Okay. Hopefully people see the goal of this function. Right. The goal of this function is to open the file, right? Grab the first line, and then format that first line to put in these three words. Right. So once again, this is going to exercise the format function. We'll talk about that later. Right, so here, I'm going to keep the story blank for now because we're going to fill this in later. So I'm going to delete that testing and just leave it as an empty string. We'll build that later. You can't what? Oh, if you're getting an error that says HTML not defined, I put in this line here. I kind of just snuck it in. So it's we need to import a library in order to use that HTML. Yeah, make sure you get this line right here. Oh, I typed it in. Yeah. Okay, any questions before we move on? Because we're going to move on to opening the file. Okay. Okay, we'll give it one more minute. Yeah, yeah. Focus on the recording and on the Zoom. Let's give it one more minute. Debugging something. Oh, you're all good? Okay, okay, cool. Okay, sweet, sweet. Okay, so we're back to opening the file, right? Thus, currently, this function doesn't really do anything with these arguments. The first thing we should probably do is open the file. This way we can grab the first line. So I'm going to go ahead and open the file name, right? This is in read-only mode because we don't really need to write anything into it. So I'm going to open in read-only mode and then store it into this variable called file handle. And don't forget to close it. Okay, file handle.close. All right. We do need to grab the first line, right? Because currently we have an open file. We need to grab the first line. So you might remember that we have a function called read line, right? This is going to grab the very first line, and we can store it into a variable. Right? I'm going to store it into a variable called line1. Or you know what? A better name for it might be a template, right? Because like if we open up a file, right, technically this first line is a template because there are holes here. Okay, so yeah, line1 is a template. Okay, and just real quick, I'm gonna do a sanity check, right? Like maybe I'm just gonna store the template into story, right? So I'm gonna say story is equal to template, right? Meaning that this blank string will now become the first line in the file. Again, we're just going to return a story here as usual. Okay, so let's test this. So I'm going to run this cell, the definition, and then run this right here. Right, so madlib2.txt. Okay, I'll press play. Okay, we see what it's doing now. It's printing the first line in the madlibs2. Right. See, if I change it to madlib1, right, and then rerun the cell, we see it's a different story. Right, people kind of see what's happening. It's grabbing the first line in this text file. All right, let's do number 3 just to see what it looks like. So I'll do 3, madlibs3. Yeah, it's a different story. Right, and you can verify that by looking at the file. Right, see, this is the file, and the first line contains that story. Right, and that's what we're seeing here. Okay, so let me change it back to madlib1. All right, do people kind of see the goal of this function now? Right, good. we're almost done actually. Right? Currently, the the function does output the story, but it's not filling in the blanks for these red, bob, and green. Right? This is word one, word two, word three. Right? These are sent up into here. Right? Word one, two, and three. So hopefully people kind of see what to do here. Right? Basically, you're gonna have to format the template. Right? So I'm gonna put a to do here for folks to do. Right? So to do, it's gonna be fill in format the template, right, with the 3 words. Now you're basically going to do the format function with these 3 words up here. Right? And you might have to review a previous lesson, which is over here. So lesson number 8. Right? You might want to go back to lesson 8 and then go down to the format function here. But basically, there's a string function called dot format where it'll fill in the blanks with whatever you put in the arguments. So you might want to review this stuff. The format function. And so take a look at this stuff. That will be a to-do for folks. Okay. So let's see. We're actually almost done with this. I do want to jump to this widget now. The widget is going to be calling the function for us, right? Because currently we're manually invoking the function, meaning that we have to type in the arguments ourselves, right? And we have to run it manually. There is a pre-written widget that will run the function for us. Down here. Folks on recording, apologies for always pausing. My projectors keep flickering. Okay, here's the widget right here. Oh, you know what? I forgot to run one more cell up here. Let me just run this widget cell, which defines 3 global widgets. So, okay, now we can run this interactive cell. You don't have to worry about this too much. Right? All this does is call the function and runs it for us. Right, so I'm just gonna press play here. All right, see, so there's 3 text boxes here, right? And there's this first drop-down menu. Right, basically all that's happening is it's calling the function for us. Right, the function has 4 arguments. Right, what we see up here, there are 4 arguments. Right, the file name, and the 3 words. But basically all the widget is doing for us is giving us an interface for these 4 arguments. Right, like for the file name, it's giving us a drop-down menu. Right, so we can choose any of these stories to generate stuff. So if I choose the first story, it's gonna output the first generated story. Right? It's gonna be your job to fill in the blanks later, but then the second one, right? It runs it for us. Right? It calls a function and runs it and returns this HTML string. And same with the third one. Right? So yeah, that's really what the widget is doing. Right? It's really just pressing play on this manual invocation. Okay, these next 3 text boxes, these are the words, right? Like if I were to put in something here, like hello, right? If I put in hello, it should pop up over here, right? But it's not popping up here yet, right? And it's the same with here, right? Like if I put something like I'm just gonna put something and then another thing. Right? It doesn't matter what you put in here so far. I'm just gonna put in some random strings. Basically, these should be formatted into these holes. Right, so far it's not doing anything with it yet, which makes sense because the function isn't doing anything with these 3 words yet. Right, so when you fill in this template, right, when you finish formatting the template, it should update as intended, right? Because no matter what I put in here, I'm just gonna put in some garbage, right? Just some garbage right here, right? If I run this, these 3 words aren't even being used, right? So that's why it's always printing these blanks. Okay. You're not gonna have to code anything in the widgets. Let's see. You don't have to touch the widgets at all here. Basically, all the widgets do is call the function for us. If anything, all you have to do is format this right here, format this template. So you have to look at the previous lessons, but basically, this story is always returning the first line, right? Which is why no matter what we change, it's still going to be the first line, right? But it should format these into the holes. Yeah, you're pretty much this function cell is where you're going to be doing all your work. Yeah, yeah, because the template is the first line in the story, right? So you're not gonna have to edit the widget, right? All you have to do is fill in this function to modify the first line. Right? This template represents the first line in the file name. Okay, I hope that makes sense on what to do. Okay, there's one more thing that we're gonna do, and then we'll be done. So these are widget descriptions, right? Currently, the widget descriptions are hard coded to say type 1, type 2, type 3. Or what it should say is the parts of speech. This way, we can know what type of word to type in. Right? So these descriptions need to change. You might remember in the Mad Libs, there are 3 more lines that represents the part of speech. Right, like here in Mad Lib 1, these next 3 lines, I don't know why my projectors keep flickering. Sorry about that, Terrace. Yeah. Recording? Okay, okay. Okay, so yeah, these next 3 lines, they represent the parts of speech, right? Yeah, yeah, no problem. So these should go into the widget descriptions, right? Like if we choose madlib 1, then it should say adverb, noun, and adjective, right? Instead of type 1, type 2, type 3, right? And similarly, if we change it to madlibs 3, right? Madlibs 3 should show noun, superlative, and then verb, right? That's what it should show instead of type 1, type 2, type 3, right? So these are widget descriptions, and we can change them just by setting the attribute, right? So there's a hint somewhere up here that talks about how to do it. Right? Basically, when we're updating the description, you can just say word widget dot description equals to whatever part of speech we grabbed. Right? So we can reuse this over here. Right? Basically, in the function, we need to grab the next 3 lines. Right? See, this first, it only grabs a story, right? But we need to grab the next 3 lines that represent the parts of speech. right? Like we could say, we could read the next lines, right? File handle dot read line, right? This is going to grab the next line, and this is technically representing the part of speech one, right? So I'm going to name it part of speech one, right? And then same with the other ones, right? There's the two other ones. There's part of speech two and part of speech three. Right, so these three lines are grabbing the rest of the file. Okay. We can update the widgets with these strings, right? Like we saw earlier here that we can just set the description attribute to that line that we just grabbed. So let's go ahead and apply that. Right? So this function, when we grab the parts of speech, we can update word one widget dot description, right, is equal to the part of speech one. Right, this is saying set the description to the line. So I'm just gonna do it to the rest of them. Okay, word two, word three, two, and then three. Okay. All right. So okay, let's see what happens now. So I'm gonna press play here. It should update our widgets now. So let's see. So down here, if I replay this cell, folks kind of see what's happening now. These descriptions are being updated, right? Like if I were to change to another Mad Libs, right? Mad Lib 2, see how it's using noun and then past tense something and plural noun. Right, same with 3, right? If I change it to the third one, then we see that the widget descriptions got updated. Right, once again, it's getting updated because the file name contains these descriptions. Okay, so we're pretty much, I think, like 95% done with the homework. If anything, folks just need to find a way to format these words into the function. Right, but basically, all you need to do is do a dot format here. Right, dot format, and then put in these words as the arguments to the format function. So please review this lesson 8. I just switched to lesson 8 and go down to the format function and just to give it a refresher. Okay, so that's it for the project. Folks are free to make your own text files too, to kind of play around with it. But yeah, hope that gives some good hints for this project. Okay, so we got 1 more minute left in class. Thank you, folks, for sticking with us, and apologies for pausing a lot in this recording. My projectors have been flickering every 5 seconds, so hopefully that didn't interrupt anyone. But yeah, anyways, have a great day, folks. And next week, we're going to be doing some cool stuff. We're going to be finally doing if statements. So decisions in branches, right? But basically, we haven't written programs to branch off into different scenarios. But next week is going to be particularly important because we're going to be diving into how to branch off into certain areas of the program, right? Logic and decisions. So these are pretty much a fancy way of saying if statements, else statements, right? Like if something is true, then do something, else do something else. So yeah, please stick around for next week. It's going to be pretty important stuff. But yeah, have a great day, folks. Thank you for sticking with us.
Thank you.
No problem, George.